Hi friends, today we're going to discuss about disorders of speech. I'm Dr. Suresh Padatmat, Professor of Psychiatry, Head of Telemedicine Center, Head of Forensic Psychiatry Services at NIMANS, Bangalore. Today we are going to discuss of disorders of speech. Speech is a very essential component of mental status examination. The whole assessment of mental status examination relies on speech. The way the patient is understanding your question, the way he's analyzing his own thoughts, his mood, his perception, and cognitive functions are conveyed by the means of speech. Hence, speech plays a very important role in mental status examination. Hence, it has been placed at the third variable in the mental status examination, immediately after general appearance and behavior and psychomotor activity. The third is very essentially speech. Let's understand the definition of speech. Speech is defined as the process of organizing thoughts, producing specific sounds that convey meaning to the listener. See, this is about the speech. Speech basically starts from the brain. It sends an impulse to the larynx. Through the larynx, through the vocal cords, the sounds are produced to communicate what the person wants to tell the other person. So that becomes the speech. But however, the speech is just a sound. But however, the sound has to be produced in a specific manner. And the understanding of the sound somebody else tells falls in the ambit of language. So we cannot assess speech without assessing language. Hence, in this video, we are going to discuss both assessment of speech and language. What is required for psychiatry, I'm going to discuss. I'm not going to discuss the assessment of language completely. What is required in the psychiatry part I'm discussing. Let's understand the definition of language. Language is a process by which we decode the symbols that we see and sequence of sounds that we hear and link them to the representation of words for understanding at the sensory pole, that is at the Wernicke's area. It is also called as sensory area, or else it is also called as receptive area. And thoughts are translated in an order of pattern producing the speech at the motor pole so that the other person understands it. That is Broca's area. I'm going to discuss about this Wernicke's area and Broca's area shortly. Considering the whole human expression of thoughts, emotions, perception, inner feelings, the only via media is speech and language. Hence, its assessments becomes paramount. How you are going to interpret if there is a disorders of speech and language also becomes very essential. Now let's understand the neuroanatomy of speech and language. Till now, we have not discussed about this. The reason being is it plays a very essential role. Let's understand. Here, you can see the brain. The brain, there is a Wernicke's area and there is a Broca's area. The Wernicke's area, Broadman's number is 22, whereas Broca's area is 44 and 45. See, Wernicke's area is the place where the person hears the sound, that basically perceives the sound, he gives a meaning to it, or he understands the speech, because there is what we call it as the library of words are present in the Wernicke's area. And it is understood there. That is, Wernicke's area is the receiving area, or what we call it as a reception area. So we call it as sensory area, Wernicke's area, or receptive area, because we receive there. From there, once we have understood what somebody is telling us or what we have read, we want to communicate something. The Wernicke's area will send an impulse to the motor area, that is Broca's area, which is in the frontal lobe. The Broca's area will produce sound by sending impulses to the larynx, to the vocal cords basically. So the Wernicke's area and Broca's area. Broca's area is a motor area where the sounds are produced. So we have to know both Wernicke's area and Broca's area. Let's summarize it very in simple words now. Moving further, if you look at the speech from the once it falls on the tympanic membrane, it moves towards the brain. In the brain, it is heard in the Wernicke's area. So please do remember, it goes into the temporal lobe, lateral aspect of the temporal lobe, where we call it as angular gyrus, where the Wernicke's area is there. That is the junction between temporal lobe and the parietal lobe. There the Wernicke's area is there, where the comprehension of the language occurs. Basically, the person understands there because the whole library of words, understanding of the language occurs here. From there, the analysis and understood the planning of the response occurs from here and goes to the Broca's area through articulate fasciculus. So that Broca's area produces sound, speech production occurs here. So this is the motor area now. So the earlier one is Wernicke's area, sensory area or receptive area, whereas Broca's area is a motor or expressive speech area. So these are the two important areas you should understand to go further to understand about the language disorder and speech disorder. Disorders of speech and language can be divided into two. One is organic, another one is functional. Organic is wherever there is a pathology. It may be brain insult or it may be at the local level also. Let's understand each one of them. Speech and language disorders can be divided into organic and functional. In organic, it is central and peripheral. In functional, stammering, stuttering, mutism, Ganser syndrome, neologism, schizophrenia. These are the important disorders of speech and language. Now we will take the organic causes of speech disorders. The organic causes can be divided into central and peripheral. Central means it is at the level of the brain. So when the brain damage occurs, because it may be because of stroke, that is because of blockage in the blood supply, or else the bursting of the vessels, we call it as hemorrhage, or it may be because of tumor, maybe cancer, maybe trauma, head injury, or a degenerative disorder like dementia or infection, what we call it as encephalitis, meningitis. They all form under the central one. The peripheral one, we can look at that, it is basically at the larynx, damage to the vocal cords, pathology around the voice production area, that is basically vocal cords and larynx. If there is a cancer of the larynx, infection, if there is any surgery has been done, so these can be easily classified into central and peripheral. We will not deal with the peripheral today. We will discuss about the central, which is very essential. We are looking into the speech and language. Let's again go back to the brain. So if you look at the brain is function of the brain with regard to speech and language is assessed in the three important criteria. One is fluency, then is comprehension, another one is repetition. Let's understand each one of them. Fluency is how well the speech is produced, whether there is an easy flow of speech. Comprehension is the way the person is able to understand the language and able to communicate. Repetition is whether the person is able to repeat the sentence what the examiner has told. So these are the three important criteria we are going to use to differentiate between various speech disorders at the central because of the organic condition. They're all called as aphasias. Speech and language disorders, because of organic condition, are invariably called as aphasias. Let's understand each one of them. As I told you, Wernicke's area is a sensory area. If there is a pathology or a lesion in the area 22 of Wernicke's area, that is sensory area or a receptive area, comprehension is impaired. But however, fluency is not affected. Here, the patient produces nonsense language. The reason being here is, it is a receptive area where the person is able to hear and able to produce sound. Here, the receptive area, the lesion is there. That means the library of language, the library of words, there is a lesion. Hence, the person is not able to understand what the other person is speaking. At the same time, he is unable to produce the words from this library because there is a lesion in the library. Hence, he will speak nonsense, but the flow of speech is completely fluent. Hence, it is called as fluent aphasia or Wernicke's aphasia, sensory aphasia or receptive aphasia. If there is a lesion in the Broca's area, that is in the area of 44 and 45, there the comprehension is spared, but fluency is impaired. Means the person will not be able to speak in a fluent way because it is the motor area which has been affected. And the speech will be telegraphic in nature, but he is able to understand. The library of words which is there in the Wernicke's area is not affected. If both the areas are affected, it is called as global aphasia. Means the person has impairment in the comprehension, impairment in the fluency of speech, and also he has a telegraphic speech. So the whole phenomena becomes global aphasia. Let's go into each one of them now. If the speech is fluent or not, that means we have to look into the fluency of speech. If there is a fluency, and next one is whether there is a comprehension, and the next one is a repetition. So these are the three important areas we have to assess. First and the foremost, if the speech is fluent or not. If the speech is not fluent, no, that means there is no fluency of speech. Check for the comprehension. The comprehension is also not there. And even if the repetition is not there, what I said is a global aphasia. Fluency is impaired, comprehension is impaired, repetition is impaired. Similarly, if the fluency is impaired, comprehension is impaired, but the repetition is spared, we call it as mixed transcortical aphasia. So please understand, this is the complete fluency is lost, comprehension is lost, repetition is lost, then it is called as global aphasia. All three has gone, the three important components. But however, the repetition is spared, we call it as mixed transcortical aphasia. We will move to the extreme end now. If the fluency is there, comprehension is there, and also repetition is there, we call it as anomic aphasia. Here we call it as anomia, or best to remember is anamika. You can't name the words. He will not be able to, if you give them certain objects, they will not be able to name. It's called as anomic aphasia, difficulty in word finding. Otherwise, comprehension is fine, repetition is fine, but they will not be able to tell the name of the objects. That is anomia. But however, if the repetition is lost, then it becomes a very essential. We call it as conduction aphasia. Comprehension, fluency is there, comprehension is there, but is unable to repeat the words. That means repetition is the only problem. Is conduction aphasia. So you have understood the important three components: fluency, comprehension, and repetition. Moving further, again, let's understand about the fluency is not there, but however, comprehension is there. Means the lesion is there in the Broca's area. If the repetition is not there, we call it as Broca's aphasia. If the repetition is spared, we call it as transcortical motor aphasia, or you can call it as transcortical Broca's aphasia. Similarly, if the fluency is there, but the comprehension is lost, repetition is not there, it is Wernicke's aphasia. If the repetition is spared, it is called as transcortical sensory aphasia, or you can call it as transcortical Wernicke's aphasia. So these are the important aphasias we have understood. But I'm going to give you one important tips here. If the repetition, important to understand, if the repetition is spared in any of them, they becomes transcortical. You look at the first one, mixed transcortical aphasia. The second one is transcortical motor aphasia. Another one is transcortical sensory aphasia. So wherever the repetition is spared, it becomes transcortical. So with this, we move forward. Let's discuss about functional causes of speech disorders. Functional causes of speech disorders are stammering, also called as stuttering, mutism, cancer syndrome, it is called as verberidden or else neologism, and schizoaphasia. Let's discuss each one of the functional disorders. They are called as functional because there is no gross pathology or brain insult is seen. It is at the level of molecular level, that is at the level of neurohormonal function, or else at the neuronal junction, it may be at the receptor level. Hence, they are called as functional disorders. But the gross pathology on MRI, CT scan cannot be seen here. So these are the important 5. Let's take each one of them. Let's discuss about stammering. It is also called as stuttering. Stammering is a speech disorder where an individual repeats or prolongs or pauses a word's syllabus or phrases. Here, the person will repeat the same word or else same last alphabet, or he may not be able to produce the next sound. So there will be a pause. So these also is associated with grimacing or tick-like movements in the face. And the anxiety worsens here. As the person from the childhood, if he develops stammering and stuttering, if it is there, we call it as a neurodevelopmental. As he becomes the adolescent, the children, other children or the society starts make fun of those people who are having stammering and stuttering. And because of this, what they happen is they develop social anxiety. And whenever they have to speak in front of others, they will stammer. This increases their anxiety further, the stammering worsens. And they will develop depression, social anxiety, and the stammering can cause severe problems for the growth of the child. So stammering and stuttering is at the peripheral level, and it invariably sometimes may be because of the central reasons, and it can also be acquired. In certain cases where there is a organic lesion in the brain, stammering and stuttering can occur even in the elderly population. Moving to the mutism, is a complete loss of speech. Here, the person may decide not to speak to certain person. That is elective mutism or a selective mutism, which is commonly seen in children. They may not speak in school, but however, they will be able to speak to the parents very well. So that is selective mutism. Hysterical mutism, we call it as aphonia, where a person, because of extreme conflict in the mind, they stop speaking. That is dissociative disorder, or else also called as hysterical mutism. Depressive mutism, under severe depression, the person's thought process is completely stopped or retarded, and they may not be able to produce any sound. It may be seen in severe, it may go into catatonic mutism also. So depressive mutism, or else in schizophrenia with extreme fearfulness of delusion of persecution, he may not speak at all. So that is catatonic mutism. Moving to the cancer syndrome, or also called as verberidden. Here, it is basically the classical example of cancer syndrome is talking past the point. That here, it is also called as approximate answer. It was seen in prison population where these people, when they have to go for assessment for fitness to stand trial, or else they have been to be executed, during that process, they would like to feign the mental illness, and when the questions are asked, they would like to give approximate answer. Here the patient replies to the question that indicates they are able to understand, but deliberately answers the associated topic. And these are very common in litigation cases. For example, I can give you, if you ask a person and show, what is this pen? What is this? If you ask me, what is this? They will say that is scale. And if you show a scale and ask them, what is that? They will say pen. Here, the issue here is they know the question, but they deliberately answer in an approximate associated area. If you ask them, where is nose? They will show the eyes. If you ask him, where is the eyes? They will show the nose. So they understand the question, but they will answer the associated subtopics. So that is cancer syndrome. Neologism. Neologism is basically formation of new words which cannot be understood. Here, the neologism is a classical example of schizophrenia, but also it can be seen in Wernicke's aphasia. Here, the person has lost the word library or sentence library, language library in the sensory aphasia, and they may produce neologism. and also in schizophrenia. In schizophrenia, it occurs in response to hallucination. He's hearing voices, maybe 3, 4 voices, and those voices, words, he will use or he will repeat that. That may be because of neologism. Or else, in attempt to find a new word for his experiences, which is hallucination, delusions, feelings, he may coin a new word. He may call it as technical neologism. Or else, the way the Bleuler has explained, he may condense 2 words. The condensation of 2 words can also be formed as a neologism. It is also called as may blend 2 words, what we call it as. Hence, neologism is a part of either organicity or else even it is a part of schizophrenia. Moving to schizophasia. This is again, we had discussed in the thought disorder in a previous video. Here, the person, because of his speech is so confused, disorganized, it's clearly a formal thought disorder. And it is also called as speech confusion or word salad. It is basically a schizophasia, and it's a part of schizophrenia where a classical formal thought disorder is seen. But however, you can either name it in the speech, but however, usually in the exam, we would like to put it under thought rather than the speech. Here, the functional disorder is in the thought process and it is depicted in the speech. Hence, we usually put it as formal thought disorder. Until date, I have not used schizophasia even one time. But however, for the knowledge of you should know about schizophasia. Moving to differentiation between the organic and functional speech disorders, or what we can call it as Wernicke's aphasia versus formal thought disorder. If you look at the Wernicke's aphasia, it is sudden in onset. There will be focal neurological signs, maybe stroke, hypertension, diabetes. In Wernicke's aphasia, comprehension is lost. Whatever you say, he is not able to comprehend. He is unable to understand. Repetition may be spared or may be lost. So this is classical examples of Wernicke's aphasia. If you look into the formal thought disorder, it will be because of insidious, because of mental illness, and he will have delusions, hallucinations. There will be oral problems, negative symptoms, disorganized behavior. But one important thing in formal thought disorder or a speech problem, they will be able to understand your motor commands. You can ask him to show his right hand, left hand, or you can ask him to go and bring your shoes, or you can ask him to go to your bed. He will be able to understand. You ask him to do simple commands or a complex commands. In formal thought disorder, they will be able to do command. They will be able to follow the commands. Whereas in Wernicke's aphasia, they will not be able to comprehend. In formal thought disorder, invariably many a time repetition will be there. Along with that, they may have even echopraxia or echolalia. Basically, echopraxia and echolalia is basically a phenomenology where echopraxia, they may mimic the examiner's or others' motor activity. Echolalia is mimicking the or repeating the words of the examiners or other people. So those can be there in formal thought disorder. With this, we move forward. Assessment of speech. Assessment of speech and language starts very essentially. We should know is it should be done in the mother tongue. That is the language of what the patient knows. You should not do it in a foreign language. If the patient speaks very well in Kannada or in Hindi or in the mother tongue, doing it in a foreign language will give a completely wrong interpretation. Hence, assessment of speech should be in their mother tongue. And you have to collect the history, collect the information from all other persons, whether it is insidious onset or it's sudden in onset, or was there a loss of consciousness, bowel bladder incontinence, indicating is there any organicity. Observing the patient to see whether there is any stammering, stuttering, making any grimacing faces, those are there. Interviewing the patient, and some cognitive test can be given. How we are going to do the assessment? Very important is you have to ask open-ended questions. That is basically you have to get a speech sample. Speech sample needs to be collected through asking open-ended questions like, tell me about your festival, like maybe various festival you can ask him, tell me about your place or city, tell me about your family, friends, tell me about your work, occupation, tell me about your college, school. So these are the questions you can ask. Further, you can also provoke him his thought process by asking, tell me about the climate change, tell me about politics, tell me about the media, tell me about the education system. You can ask any questions in the area of the patient's interest and try to get the good speech sample. If in both the cases, if it fails, ask him a structured way of putting the questions in a semi-structured format. It's basically ask him, how do you prepare coffee? So these are the simple questions you can ask to get the good speech sample. How often we should do this? Especially in inpatient, you can do 2 or 3 times a week, maybe daily if you are going to do a catatonic assessment to know whether the speech is improving or not, where you are using Bush-Francis scale. But however, it can be 2 or 3 times, or it may be outpatient during the follow-up. Who should do? Invariably the doctors or the psychiatrist or neurologist, primary care doctors. If the person has undergone training, psychologists, social worker and nurses can do the assessment of speech. How to comment on the speech in mental status examination, especially in psychiatry? Here, we are going to assess on important 8 parameters: coherence, relevance, spontaneity of speech, tone, tempo, reaction time, prosody, and volume. Now we will take each one of them. The speech will be commented on the coherence. Coherent means whether the speech is logical, consistent, and it is understandable. So that is called as coherent. If you are able to understand whether he is able to make the sentence in a logical way, and there is a grammar is to some extent it's good. So that is called as coherence. Whether it is relevant, whatever the question you are asked, he is answering in the relevant way. So that will give, yes, it is coherent, it is relevant. If it is not coherent, you are unable to understand his answers, that means is incoherent. Of course, it will be irrelevant also. So incoherent, irrelevant go together. It may be coherent. Many a time, the patient may speak coherently, but rarely sometimes it may be irrelevant. So coherence, relevance. Moving further, patient whether he speaks spontaneously, especially in mania, as soon as the patient says, he will engage the examiner. Whereas in depression, it is very difficult. You have to ask question 3-4 times, then only they will respond. So to know whether the speech was spontaneous or to the question, or else you have to repeat the question many times. Amount of speech, whether the volume was adequate or very less, whether it was a monosyllabus speech, or he will do only the head gesture. So volume increased, decreased, that you have to mention here. Whether the speech was high-toned or low-toned, the volume was very high, the loudness, that is called as tone. Coming to the tempo, the rate of speech, the rate of flow of speech. If the tempo is very fast, especially in mania, they will speak very fast. You may find it very difficult to understand. So you can call rate of flow is very high or the tempo is very high. Coming to the reaction time, the time taken to respond to the question. If it is very fast, before you ask a question or is about to finish the question, the patient starts responding. It is commonly seen in mania. In depression, the reaction time will be very huge. You ask a question, after 10 seconds or 15 seconds or repeating the questions, then only they will respond. Then you can say reaction time is increased. Reaction time is decreased in mania. How is the prosody? That is emotional intonation of the speech. Whether the emotional ups and downs are there. That is basically the prosody is maintained or not maintained, present or absent can be comment. So to comment about the speech, at the end after you give a complete speech sample and you have to give impression telling that my impression coherent, relevant, tone, tempo, reaction time is normal, volume is adequate, and spontaneous speech is there. So in my opinion, speech is normal. That is the way you are going to comment. To conclude, my dear friends, the speech is a very important component of mental status examination. Without the assessment of speech and language, and without knowing it is normal, the complete assessment of mental status examination and cognitive functions becomes false. So you have to do a thorough speech and language assessment to know the thought process, perception, mood, and cognitive function. So this is how we do the speech assessment. Thank you very much for your valuable time. Stay safe.